Hey folks, welcome to the Slugscape Holiday Special. This is a battle report for a semi-casual tournament we held at my local scene in December of 2025. The army limits were as follows: 425 points and contemporary figures only, as well as 24 hexes for start zone. Because December is the season for gift giving for us over here, we decided to come up with a format that was all about giving gifts to your opponent. The format we decided to roll with is called Reverse the Whip, otherwise known as Double-Edged Sword. I feel like this is a format that's easy to understand, but kind of tough to explain, so I'm gonna try my best here. Basically, you bring an army to the event, and in your first match against your first opponent, you just play like normal. You play your army against their army. However, in your second match, you trade armies with a new opponent. So now you're playing your opponent's army as if it was your own, and you're fighting your own army as your adversary. Then in your third match, you swap back to controlling your own army, and so on. The idea here is that Reverse the Whip really middles out the playing field. You're trying to build an army that can win you games, but also can lose to you when you're using your opponent's army. It needs to be an army that is good enough to win games, but also not too good that it can't lose games. I really enjoy Reverse the Whip because it allows for a totally different army building dynamic, and we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. However, before we get into that, there's a twist. In this variation of the Reverse the Whip format, we decided to give each player access to 3 different treasure glyphs before they started their first match. The Heroic Rune gives +1 attack, the Talisman of Defense gives +1 defense, and the Brooch of Shielding gives the disengage power to any unique hero that has the glyph. Because the theme of this event is all about gift giving, we decided that in the first round, you give your opponent a glyph as a gift. The catch here is that whichever glyph you give to your opponent in this match is the glyph that you will receive to use with your army in your second match. So if you give your opponent a strong glyph now, that guarantees you a strong glyph later. But it might mean you lose your current game if you give them too much of an advantage over you. So it was kind of a self-regulating way to keep the power level across these random armies a little bit more even across the board. Also, it's just a little bit of fun. We are playing this game to have fun after all, so that was kind of our approach here. You'll probably see in these battle reports a lot more casual play than what we saw in my Halcon Valkyrie Trials event one. So yeah, you'll probably see a lot of misplays here or there, and we're not playing for the most optimized builds here. It's Reverse the Whip, it's kind of who cares sort of a scenario. I did put up a box of trees for whoever won the event, whoever got the most wins, so we'll see who gets that at the end of it all. Speaking of glyphs though, there's quite a large glyph pool here. I'm just gonna put it all up on screen. I stole this idea from Sam over in Halifax. I loved it so much I just copied it wholesale. Basically the idea here is that the glyphs are randomized and placed face down on all the maps, and once each player has placed their army on the board, then the glyphs are flipped face up and you proceed from there. Kind of a cool hodgepodge collection of glyphs, some popular ones, some unpopular ones, all put together here. 4 temporary glyphs and 4 permanent glyphs, and that sort of combination is definitely going to lead to some matches that are unbalanced, I suppose, where one side of the map has a permanent glyph and the other side's only temporary, so the play is going to probably gravitate towards the permanent glyph side of the map. But like I said earlier, pretty semi-casual event here. We're not too concerned about any of that. It's just kind of fun to see these glyphs in play. Because endless snow shoveling is the reality of living in the Great White North, we decided to have 4 maps all with snow theming: Frostfall, Hidden, Liquefy, and Cultivation. The tournament was 4 rounds, but before we get into the games, let's talk about the army building phase. So like I mentioned earlier, Reverse the Whip is really about building a mid-tier army, something that will win you some games when you play it, and something that will lose games when your opponent plays it. To that end, you probably want to pick something that you feel like you specifically will be able to pilot really well, but your opponent will probably fumble. I felt like a contemporary-only Reverse the Whip would be really interesting to see, because it would chop the top off of the most powerful things. We're not going to see Adelburn and we're not going to see Maledrix. They're just kind of too strong for this format. What we're left with then is a pretty interesting menagerie of different Dryan combinations, crabs, Tanuki tricksters, maybe smaller amounts of Gelry. The sky's the limit there, and we get to see all sorts of things in the coming games. So when I was building my army, I kind of figured, Glide Strikers. I want to use Glide Strikers. I think Vord Glide Strikers are a perfect army card for Reverse the Whip. In addition to them being an army card that your opponent probably doesn't have a lot of experience with, I think this format works really well for them because they're not going to be up against the best of the best. Their piddly little 2-attack, 3 with height, ranged ping shots are probably going to be able to cut through the things that they're going to be up against in this meta. However, because I felt the Glide Strikers were such a good choice for Reverse the Whip, I kind of figured my opponents would probably bring them in their armies, so maybe I don't need to bring the Glide Strikers in my army, I can bring something else. That's kind of where my head was at with that. I kind of felt that maybe I wanted to play this a little bit differently. What if I bring a figure or combination of figures that I felt I could pilot pretty well and my opponents probably couldn't? So that train of thought led me to Sonlin. This is a figure that I have a ton of experience playing with. I've played so many Soloscape games with Age of Annihilation Sonlin, especially with Scion support of some kind. Sonlin can be an absolute offensive powerhouse, but he's so brittle. It's such a glass cannon of an army card. So if my opponent, when they control the army, isn't careful, I think they might overextend Sonlin, and it has a weakness then. The army has a weakness where if you misplay Sonlin, you might be in a bad situation. Because he's 170 points, that's nearly half my army right there, so I kind of had to decide what I wanted to follow him up with. And to that end, I decided to continue rocking the Ular build here. I brought out Mielke, the Kiri Warrior, and Ziamara, the Kiri Warrior. These are figures that I also had experience with. I'd brought them to events before, usually with protectors in there as well, just to kind of fill out the army, but without the availability of protectors in this format, they have to go it alone. Now, Sonlin, Ziamara, and Mielke are a trio of figures that have a little bit of interwoven synergy between them. Ziamara has a really powerful aura. It's a 6-range aura where any Kiri that follow Ular within that aura can roll to take less wounds, essentially 17 or higher, they take no wounds. So that can be really good to help keep Mielke alive. Mielke then has the Spear of Senkari, which allows her to heal Ziamara anytime she destroys a figure, and they're both within 4 spaces of each other. That helps keep the two of them alive, but then Sonlin can also use Healing Wing to heal either of them. I didn't realize this until the day of the event and it was pointed out to me, but Mielke can't heal Sonlin, which is what I originally thought could happen here. I thought the Spear of Senkari could also take wounds off of Sonlin to help keep him alive, but it only targets smaller medium figures. Whoops. So, like I said, there's a little bit of synergy there, but not a lot of bit of synergy. In addition, it's also kind of like an order marker nightmare to try to run that whole build as a combined arms sort of force. So I figured that might be another way that my opponent might fumble using this army if I try to trick them into distributing the order markers in an inefficient way. My army was almost complete, but I had 75 points left over. And normally, in a contemporary event, if you have 75 points left over, you throw the exiles in, baby. You get those exiles out there, and you just rock it. But the exiles are way too good for this, I think. So, we're bringing the Scions of Icaria. Now, the Scions of Icaria bond with Sonlin, which means you can move both using order markers on the card for the Scions. This can be beneficial to allow you to gain multiple activations on your turn. However, only having one copy of this common squad means that putting any order markers on the Scions card is a bit of a risk. There's only 3 of them, and they each only have 2 defense, so they are super flimsy, just like their big dragon boy too. So I figured this might be another way to build a trap in my army. If my opponent who controls this army isn't careful, they might end up putting too many order markers on the Scions, allowing me to snipe their order markers. Now, just like the titular double-edged sword, that cuts both ways. I have to be careful when I'm piloting this army not to put too many order markers on the Scions, or at least keep one out of harm's way. So that's my army. The Scions of Ikaria, Mielke the Curie Warrior, Ziamara the Curie Warrior, and Sonlin the Sonlin. Let's see how my army fared in its first game. My first match was on Frostfall by Rainy Days. This is a really cool map. I want to play more games on this one, I think, in the future here. I love the look of the midsection here with all the road terrain and the sand and rock mixed in with the snow. Yeah, I just think it looks awesome. And the pillar placements are really interesting too. They make for some good action near the start zones. My opponent brought an army made up with 4 army cards here. Anshu the Welkanai, Halucia, Scion of the Wild, the Ordo Borealis, and Sergeant Drake Alexander. I think the Ordo are an interesting choice for Reverse the Whip because they're kind of the bears that are the most middle of the road, I suppose. You have the big, strong bears, the Frost Claws, and Adelburn, and even Knight Irene to some extent there. All really powerful figures. And the Ordo just kind of, you know. They're also the ones that I feel like you can pilot them well and you can pilot them wrong. So we'll see what happens here. In this army, the Ordo can be scary because of their 7 range. They have the ability to outrange Sonlin, and they have the ability to snipe my Scions really easily, so there's the risk of losing order markers if I have them all dumped on the Scions, so I need to be aware of that. However, I think I'm more scared of Halucia and Anshu. That's just a really great pairing of pieces there, and their 170 points of value versus Sonlin's 170 points of value are pretty evenly matched. It might even be a slight edge for Halucia and Anshu, if I'm being honest. Lastly, Sergeant Drake is actually a pretty scary figure for my army to go up against. His Thorian speed means I can't target him at range with Sonlin, and the only special attacks I have in my army are the Scion's breath weapons, and they can only use them if Sergeant Drake is within striking distance of Sonlin, so I don't, it's just bad news if they can use that, so yeah, kind of some scary pieces here. I'm not sure which way this is gonna go. After setting our figures down on the board, we have to decide which treasure glyph we're going to gift to our opponent. There are certainly some figures in this army that I'm up against that I'm kind of scared about. However, as I looked over my options here, I kind of figured, you know what? I could actually get away with giving my opponent the +1 attack glyph in this matchup, because there aren't very many figures here that are going to get a ton of value out of that. So what if Sergeant Drake has 7 attack instead of 6 attack? That's not really going to affect the state of the game all that much. Halucia is probably a good recipient of the +1 attack glyph, but even still, the Ride by Special Attack doesn't get any benefit from that. Anshu is probably a bad call to give the glyph to, so I figured I could set myself up for future success, because I'm thinking about my next match, right? Whatever glyph you give your opponent in this match, you get to keep for yourself in your next match. So I figured, you know what? This is the one I'm going to give my opponent the +1 attack. My opponent chose to hand me a +1 defense glyph, which I give to Sonlin. I think both Mielke and Sonlin are good recipients for this, but especially Sonlin. There's no way to heal Sonlin in this army here, and Sonlin is the crux of everything. I need to do so much damage with Sonlin in order to have a chance of winning. Like I predicted, my opponent opts to give the +1 attack to Halucia. When we flip the glyphs face up, we find that we have a couple of pretty interesting temporary glyphs. We've got the glyph of Kelda, which is an old school classic one where any wounded hero can walk onto it and completely be healed. So that'll be pretty important, I think, pretty impactful for either Sonlin or Halucia in particular. The other glyph on the other side, I think it's the glyph of Erland, if I remember correctly. It's the summoning glyph. It's actually my favorite glyph in the game. I love this stupid thing. When you walk onto it, you can bring any other figure on the board into an adjacent space. It can be your opponent's figure, you can summon them, or you can bring one of your own figures over as well. Red Rover, we call Halucia over, or whatever. So I think the play here then is to go for the northern side of the map in the early game, try to get to the glyph first, and then go for the southern side of the map late game to try to heal up with Kelda. There wasn't a ton of preparation or thought put into the start zone placements here, I think for any players that played at the event here today, so I'm not going to talk all too much about that. We're just going to kind of dive into the game and see what generally happens. We place our order markers. I have 3 order markers on the Scions and 1 order marker on Ziamara. It's 3 numbered order markers on the Scions and my X is on Ziamara. Kind of just trying to fake out my opponent, see if I was going to move Ziamara up or not. I don't know. I don't know if that's the best place to put the X, but it's where I did. If I remember correctly, my opponent has 2 order markers on Halucia, 1 order marker on the Ordo, and 1 order marker on Sergeant Drake. So when we roll initiative, my opponent wins initiative, and they move Anshu and Halucia up into the middle of the map, Anshu on max height, and Halucia onto the road. Because my opponent still has an unrevealed order marker on Halucia, I'm really scared of him just running in and doing a ton of damage to Sonlin, so I play pretty defensively with my order marker here. I reveal my number 1 on the Scions, and I move Sonlin up to behind the pillars and use a couple of the other Scions to kind of body block so that there's no way Halucia can get in there to attack Sonlin. Of course, Anshu could always clear the path forward, and there's really nothing I can do about that, so I just have to try to put my best foot forward here. I'm also hiding another Scion behind the walls back here. That's just to kind of keep the order marker alive in case my opponent tries to just target the Scions instead of going for Sonlin. I just want to, hedge my bets a little bit here. I'm nervous about what I'm seeing. My opponent shows me that I don't really need to be that nervous though, as she moves up the Ordo as her order marker 2, just moving them into kind of a battle position here. This is starting to make me think that order marker 3 is actually on Sergeant Drake, and this is just a slow roll, move the whole army up into the middle of the map sort of thing. We'll see. So with my order marker 2, I decide then to kind of spring a trap. I move Sonlin onto the glyph of summoning, and I bring Anshu over. I figured Anshu was the one I actually wanted over here because I wanted to kill whatever figure I brought to the glyph location. And Anshu actually has a big threat risk, I suppose, of taking out a bunch of Scions really quickly, and I don't want that threat on the board. So I summon Anshu, and through my 2 attacks, I kill Anshu. I then do some more body blocking with the Scions. I just want to put them in positions where Halucia can't get next to Sonlin. I think piloting the Sonlin army well involves putting Scions in very defensive positions, foregoing attacks in favor of positioning. Remember, Sonlin can't die if your opponent can't attack them. On the other hand, piloting the Sonlin army well also involves knowing when to go in for the kill, and in this moment, I decide to go in for the kill. I fly Sonlin in and get 2 heighted attacks down on Halucia. With the Scions as support and them using their breath weapons, we're able to kill Halucia this turn. This is a huge round 1 for me, because I'm able to take out Halucia and Anshu, and eliminate the summoning glyph, the risk of that, all without taking a dent in my army. In addition to that, I've set myself up for a pretty potent initiative switch if I get it. The problem now is, how many order markers do I put on the Scions, and how many order markers do I put on Sonlin? The Scions are now all at risk of being taken out by the Ordo on my opponent's next order marker if they put their number 1 on the Ordo and win initiative. So I really can only, put so many numbered order markers on the Scions. So I decide to go with a 3-1 split with 3 order markers on the Scions, 1 order marker on Sonlin. And indeed, it's actually order marker 3 that's on Sonlin, so I've got 1-2X on the Scions. This might be a little greedy on my part, but I figure I can always fly a Scion away if I need to, right? Just get them out of range of the Ordo. They can't really chase them down to the same effectiveness, right? Because they have to move, and then on next turn they have to shoot. So the Scions can get away from the Ordo, and it's pretty unlikely that my opponent's going to be able to wipe the Scions out with 1 order marker if they win initiative. My opponent does indeed have a 3-1 split between the Ordo and Sergeant Drake, so I'm expecting those to be real order markers on the Ordo. My opponent's in a bad spot here, but unfortunately it gets worse for them. I win initiative, and we get the flip. It's really tempting to go for the +1 attack glyph here, but I kind of learned from my experience at Halcon, where I used Adelburn, maybe ineffectually in one of my games, ran him back to go grab a glyph when he really should have just continued into the fight to go fight my opponent. So I decided to forgo the theoretical +1 attack advantage there and just go for the guaranteed kill here. I get a heighted attack down on the Ordo Borealis, and followed up with another heighted attack. It actually takes both to kill the bear that I was targeting. And then the 3 scions all use their breath weapons, and they're able to deal 1 more wound to the Ordo. So the Ordo are effectively at half health. As expected, my opponent reveals Order Marker 1 on the Ordo, but because they no longer have 3 figures in the squad, they can't even take out all the scions in the best case scenario. So they decide to instead move in and target Sonlin himself. I think this is probably the right play. I don't know, it's tough to tell. Maybe going for the scions here would be better, just try to kill the Order Marker, but like I said, I can always run one of the scions away and, you know, with no risk, so I don't think they can kill the Order Markers even if they tried. Might just be better to kill Sonlin. Now, Sonlin does have the +1 defense glyph, so, you know, he's a little bit beefier than normal. Still, he is but a mortal elf archmage, so, you know, he is very killable. Unfortunately for my opponent, though, now they start rolling all their shields, and they don't get any damage dealt to Sonlin. On my next Order Marker, I kind of just continue the carnage here. Sonlin stands his ground, takes out 1 more Ordo Borealis, and the 3 scions, the 3 little musketeers here, deal 1 more wound to the last remaining Ordo. My opponent reveals their next Order Marker on the Ordo, and at this point they actually decide to target the scions. So they attack a scion, and they're able to kill it. This shift in priorities might be the right call here, because they're looking at now only having Sergeant Drake as the final endgame piece. So killing scions, which are the only figures in my army with special attacks, kind of makes some sense there. Also, just putting a couple wounds on Sonlin with the glyph of Kelda on the map is also not all that important because I can just fly away and go get healed. So yeah, they're probably better suited at getting rid of some of my Order Marker activations. That's probably the right call. On my last Order Marker, I pivot Sonlin and take out the final Ordo Borealis. I choose to stand my ground with the scions, and actually the one closest to Sonlin takes a shot down at Sergeant Drake, but it's blocked. Going into round 3, I think I can pretty much safely put my Order Markers on the scions. Not that it's really going to matter here, it just gets me a little bit of added utility out of my Order Markers. Still, I get greedy here and decide to put all my numbered Order Markers on the scions anyways. My opponent only has Sergeant Drake now, so it's just going to be a game of dice. My opponent wins initiative though, swinging it back in their favor. They fly Sergeant Drake in and take an attack against Sonlin, dealing 2 wounds. These are always scary moments though when you're playing an army with Sonlin. Your opponent attacks with a high attack value figure, and you're just sitting there with a piddly 3, or in this case 4 defense. It does not feel good. On my Order Marker 1, Sonlin stands his ground and makes a couple attacks against Sergeant Drake. I can't see Sergeant Drake's card, so I can't remember how much damage is dealt here. I know some damage goes through, but I just can't remember the statistics, so we'll just leave it as a big question mark. The scion in the back moves in and actually makes a breath attack against Sergeant Drake, but the one in the middle here can't fly away because I need to protect that spot, because I don't want Sergeant Drake to go there. But I also can't shoot Sergeant Drake from here because there's a tree in the way, so there's another wasted attack. But like I said earlier, that's kind of what you have to do when you play the scions, and with Sonlin, I mean. You need to use them as body blockers. It looks like I'm missing a photo here, but my opponent takes another turn with Sergeant Drake. They attack Sonlin, but I block it. Another bullet dodged. On my next Order Marker, I attack Sergeant Drake and do a mystery amount of damage. I think, judging by the events of my next Order Marker, though, I think at this point in time I've got Sergeant Drake down to 1 life remaining. On my opponent's order marker, though, things get scary. All of a sudden, Sergeant Drake starts rolling those skulls, and they attack Sonlin and reduce Sonlin to 1 life remaining. Ah, man, running Sonlin armies it's so scary sometimes. Regardless, though, I decide I need to kill Sergeant Drake right here, right now. Let's close this game out. I don't want Sergeant Drake running off to Kelda to get healed up later on. So I get a little bit more aggressive with my posturing. I try to use Sonlin to take out Sergeant Drake. That doesn't happen, but I actually swing the Scion around from the back to get 2 breath weapon attacks, and it's actually the breath weapons that go through and finish the job. I end the game victorious and go into the rest of the event with 1 win under my belt. Now, for any players watching at home that are of that beginner or intermediate sort of skill level, kind of that sort of skill level that I occupy, honestly, I think we can look at this game and really take away that where you place your order markers in round 1 is really important. I think if we look back and we rewind all the way to that moment where Halucia and Anshu are in the middle of the map and my opponent hasn't done anything else beyond that, if all the order markers are on Halucia, this could be a totally different game here, because then Anshu moves in and starts killing Scions, and Halucia tries to whack at Sonlin. I think there's a good chance my opponent could win if they just allocated their order markers differently from the start. Or lead with the Ordo, put all your order markers on the Ordo, step them forward and really threaten Sonlin. That could work, or even lead with Sergeant Drake. Just pick one rather than, picking all 3, because you're just kind of sending them out to their death if they don't have continuous order markers on them. So I really want folks who watch along with these videos and with the thought of they want to learn a little bit more about how the game functions, to take that away, take away this idea of plan out your round 1. Really make sure you have a solid round 1, because it'll snowball and it'll allow you to have a really good round 2 and so on. I think also you need to be thinking about what your end game looks like. What are your objectives to actually win the game? And I know from, playing Sonlin-based armies that the way to beat this army is to kill Sonlin. You just take out Sonlin and you're good to go. The Scions don't matter. Focus fire Sonlin. Do whatever you can to take out Sonlin. If you can kill order markers in the process, go for it. Go for those Scion kills, because that helps you kill Sonlin. So you just need to be doing anything possible, anything within your power. Look at what you have in your army to be able to achieve the objectives that you set for yourself. Anyways, that's just one Slug's opinion. On to round 2. In my second match, I was on the map Liquefy by Tarhar, and holy cat's meow, is this a cool map. If you haven't built this one before, you really need to do so, because it feels like utter madness when you're putting together level 1 and level 2. You're like, what is going on with this? It's such an interesting combination of terrain as well, too. It's 1 battle box, 1 snowfields, and 1 swamp fields of Valhalla. It's really cool. I quite like this one a lot. Anywho, this is the reverse round, so I've handed my opponent my army, and they've handed me, they've handed me something here. 3 squads of Molten Crustaceans, 2 squads of Tanuki Tricksters, the Necrotech Wraith Riders, and Marachot Mind Whisperer with no familiar to bond with. It's a lot of material, sure, but I think it's going to be tough to find an efficient use of what I've been given. There's definitely a gimmick at play here, where you want your crabs to go first and create lava so you can mind whisper your opponent's figures into the lava, or use chain grab to pull them into the lava, or Tanuki Nagawaza them into the lava. Yeah, I get that, but at the same time, I kind of want to win this game, so I'm not going to do any of that. So we're putting the Molten Crustaceans in the back of the start zone, and I'm going to try to get conventional value out of the Necrotech Wraith Riders first. Oh, and by the way, imagine my horror when I noticed that the only figure in this army I can give the +1 attack glyph to is Marachot, who already has 2 auto skulls and only 1 attack die. Brutal. I was setting myself up for such a good second round, but yeah, this army completely countered that. My opponent has the Talisman of Defense, and they quite wisely give it to Sonlin. This is going to hamper my plans somewhat to do damage directly to Sonlin with the Necrotech Wraith Riders, but, it's still my best bet here, I think. 8 move is the fastest on the board, so I'm just going to try to roll them in and engage what I can and do as much damage with them in the opportunities that I'm given. Additionally, I'm hoping my opponent places a lot of order markers on the Scions, because then I can chain grab those and kill them quite easily with all the Wraith Riders, hopefully killing some order markers. As such, I have 3 real order markers on the Necrotechs, and my decoy, I think it's on Marachat. To my surprise, however, my opponent has no order markers on the Scions, and instead an order marker on Sonlin, an order marker on Ziamara, and 2 on Mielki. Not the opening I was expecting. Before we get into the turns, though, I should mention the glyphs on the map here. In the north, we have the glyph of Lodin, which is +1 to any d20 rolls. And in the south here, it's kind of tough to see with the glare, but that is the glyph of Dagmar, which is +8 to your initiative roll. Now, of those 2 glyphs, Lodin actually really helps my army. My entire army relies on d20 rolls. If I was going for the gimmick play, and I'm not concerning myself with that. I don't want the d20 to be the determining factor on whether or not I win or lose this, so I'm choosing to ignore that and instead playing for initiative if I need it. Turns out I might need it because my opponent wins initiative with a nat 20, revealing order marker 1 on Mielki and moving her up into the midfield on the swamp side of the map. My order marker is on the Necrotech Wraith Riders, and they start rolling in. Their placement in the start zone kind of facilitated an opening like this, and though I was expecting to go up against Scions and Sonlin first, I kind of have to just roll with the punches here, pun intended. Anyways, I move 2 into the center on the south side of the map, and I use Chain Grab to pull Mielki over and adjacent to one of them to get an attack in, which does 1 wound. The Necrotech in the north just kind of rolls up onto the snow up there. I'm not really sure what he's doing. Probably just going to roll in and do some damage to the Scions on his next order marker activation, I would assume. In hindsight, giving my opponent an opportunity to move Mielki into the center here and get 2 attacks off against 2 different Necrotechs was probably a bad play. That was probably the wrong idea there. But I'm pretty confident that order marker 2 isn't on Mielki, because I don't think it makes sense to put 1 and 2 on Mielki and then just leave her stranded. I'm kind of thinking this is another one of those, spreading the order markers out sort of openings that we saw in our last game. So I think my Necrotechs are safe here. Let's see what happens. Yeah, looks like I'm right. So my opponent uses order marker 2 to move Ziamara up, kind of into the mid-center here. Not really much she can do, though, with only 5 move. My order marker 2 is on the Necrotechs, of course, and I kind of have an interesting play here. I move the 2 in the south up onto height above Mielki, and then I use Chain Grab to move Ziamara onto height in the middle of them. The reason why I did this is because I don't want Mielki to be on that spot, so I put Ziamara there instead. I think this was actually a pretty savvy move on my part, because I get 2 heighted attacks down on Mielki, and my opponent's own figure is the one that's blocking the spot where he wants to be, should order marker 3 actually be on Mielki. So yeah, that's what I chose to go with here. Across their 2 attacks, they're only able to deal 1 wound though, because my opponent actually rolled high enough for the amulet on the first one to block all damage. So Ziamara plus Mielki is pretty tanky. It's a good combo. The Necrotech that was in the north there rolls on down and kills a Scion in the start zone. I know Sonlin is the true target here, but killing the Scions makes it easier for me to gain the potential to kill order markers later. And as we saw from my final game at HalCon 2025, killing order markers is really good. My opponent's order marker 3 is indeed on Mielki, and I'm really glad I moved Ziamara to that spot to deny the even ground attacks, because Mielki's pretty much forced to just attack up at one of the Necrotechs, and over the course of 2 attacks, she's able to kill it. My order marker 3 is on the Necrotex, and so I decide to roll in with the one in my opponent's start zone and tie down Sonlin. I kind of have to go out and around this tree in order to get there, though, because I don't want to engage the other 2 Scions that are sitting there. I also attack Sonlin, dealing 1 wound. Additionally, my Necrotech up on height above Mielke attacks down, dealing another wound. That's the end of the round, and I gotta start thinking about the future now. My Necrotechs are not long for this world. However, I am guaranteed at least 1 turn with them, I think, because they're split across my opponent's possible activations. If my opponent puts an order marker on Mielke, they'll probably kill the Necrotech down there in the far south, and if they put an order marker on Sonlin, they'll probably kill the one in their start zone, but they have to kind of pick which one they're going to go for. So I'm pretty safe to put at least order marker 1 on the Necrotechs, even if I lose initiative. Because of this, I actually decide to put 2 numbered order markers on the Necrotechs, just because I love their position so much here, and I want to try to just squeeze as much value out of them as I can. So that's 1 and 2, and the X go on the Necrotechs, with order marker 3 on the Tanuki Tricksters, which is going to be my next follow-up. I just want to try to get a lot of value out of the Tanuki as well, too. Conventional value, just conventional attacks against this army. I think that's the way to beat it. My opponent has split their order markers up a little bit differently this time. There's still 2 order markers on Mielke, 1 on Ziamara, but now the one that was on Sonlin is actually on the Scions this time, so who knows what it is. I lose initiative, but I must be favored by the Heroscape gods somewhat, because my opponent's order marker 1 is on Mielke, and they choose to attack up at the Necrotech Wraithrider on height, but over the course of the double attack, I am only wounded. The Necrotech survives, which is huge for me. I reveal order marker 1 on the Necrotech Wraithriders, and I decide to roll around to the other side of Sonlin here a little bit, just to get further away from the Scions, and further away from the height attack that they might have from this spot right here. I attack Sonlin, Sonlin blocks, but I do get the kill on Mielke, so that's pretty big. My opponent reveals a surprising order marker 2 on Ziamara. That is not the figure I expected to have the 2 on, but Ziamara is able to clean up the last of the Necrotechs on that height there, so, you know, it worked out well. I use order marker 2 to activate the final Necrotech Wraithrider, attack Sonlin, and I'm still only able to deal 1 wound. So across 3 different attacks into Sonlin here, I've only dealt 2 wounds, which is not great, but you know, every little bit helps. My opponent reveals order marker 3 on the Scions and uses Sonlin to kill the final Necrotech Wraithrider. Unfortunately, though, they forgot to use the Scions, and neither one of us caught this in the moment. We just kind of moved on with the game, and we didn't notice until we were midway through the next round that they just had completely forgotten to use the Scions here. So, whoops, big whoops on our part there. So it comes around to my order marker 3, which is on the Tanuki Tricksters, and I've got to say I'm actually really happy with how this round has gone thus far. Yes, all my Necrotechs are dead, but that was going to happen no matter what. And the real matter here is that I was able to trade them for some good value. I took Mielke out, which is really big. She's a scary offensive piece. And I was able to do some damage to the Sonlin army in the back there. Not as much as I wanted, though, if I'm being perfectly honest. I kind of felt that like 3 attacks into Sonlin should have dealt more than just 2 wounds, but I don't know. He does have the defense glyph there, so +1 defense. That helps him quite a bit, to be honest. So anyways, the Tanukis move up here. They attack into Ziamara, and they deal 2 wounds with the kunai there, which is pretty good. Then I Tanuki Iruki and move the remaining Tanukis in the start zone, and I move them out. And that's because my opponent reminded me about the ability. I forget Tanuki Iruki all the frickin' time, so it just comes at such a weird timing spot, I find. Like, it's after you've made your attacks, after you've done your movement, after you've done your turn with them, all of a sudden there's this added trigger that you have to do. It's kind of rare to find Heroscape cards that do things, especially squads that do stuff during that timing window, I suppose. Yeah, so anywho, thank you to my opponent for pointing that out. I wish I could have returned the favor by pointing out your the Scions, to use the Scions, but I completely blanked on that. So going into round 3, I'm basically gonna repeat my strategy of just trying to milk as much value out of the pieces I've been given, except now it's the Tanuki Tricksters rather than the Necrotech Wraith Riders. To that end, I've put all 3 of my numbered order markers on the Tanuki, and I think I put the X on Marachat. The crabs are pretty much worthless as long as Sonlin's on the board, so I'm not even bothering to develop them at all. My opponent opts to go for a 2-2 split between Ziamara and the Scions. In keeping with the theme of this game so far, I lose initiative again, and my opponent moves Ziamara in using their order marker 1, and they take out one of my Tanuki Tricksters, which is really unfortunate for me. I didn't want that to happen. I try to seize an opportunity here, though, and I actually move the Tanuki that survived in the middle there further forward to attack Sonlin in the start zone from height. Again, I'm just trying to put wounds on Sonlin, take Sonlin out, and then the game's in the bag from there. The other Tanuki moves in to attack Ziamara, replacing the spot where the previous one was. Both of them are able to deal 1 wound to their respective targets. Lastly, I Iruki the final Tanuki in behind the tree here, this jungle tree, and I remembered to do it all by myself this time. My opponent's order marker number 2 is on the Scions, and Sonlin finally gets to fly into the middle of the map here and start doing some damage. My opponent had an interesting decision point to make here. They were looking at targeting my Tanukis, but the Tanukis are standing, all 3 of them by the way, are standing next to Jungle Bush, so they'd have 5 defense against the attack. So then they started looking into my start zone to see what sort of juicy targets I had down there. The Molten Crustaceans all only had 3 defense, but Marachat over here next to the tree would have only 4, so they actually decided to shoot at Marachat for the hope of doing more damage with the added attack die from having height, and they are able to do 1 wound to Marachat. The Scions then fly in and try to kill this Tanuki closest to my opponent there, and I was really hoping for this Tanuki to hang on because I felt like I got ripped off from my first one that got killed by Ziamara so easily. I needed, if my Tanuki dies to Scions, like, come on, right? The Tanuki held strong. It survives the attacks, so I was pretty happy about that. Before I move on, though, my opponent was actually able to heal Ziamara using Sonlin's Flying Wing ability, so she removes 1 of her wounds. Kind of a nice play, a nice little added bonus. You get Sonlin into the battle, and you get to heal one of the previously wounded figures. It unfortunately does leave Sonlin open to some Tanuki shenanigans, and so I try to do that with my order marker 2. Using Phantom Walk and shuffling some figures around, I move these Tanuki up on height, and I get 2 powerful 4 attacks down on Sonlin. However, both are blocked, and I'm sitting here just tearing my hair out thinking that, how can I not kill Sonlin? Like, I feel like I've attacked him like 5 or 6 times this game. How is he not dead? I guess that Talisman of Defense really does benefit Sonlin quite a bit. 4 defense on this card might be too strong, so maybe it was the right call to only give him 3 defense. My opponent reveals their last order marker on the Scions and uses Sonlin to kill the Tanuki Trickster adjacent to him. The Scions then fly in to gang up on the final Tanuki Trickster on height there, but they're not able to get the kill. This does, however, prevent me from getting a heighted attack down on Sonlin, which is probably why they did this. With my final order marker, I feel like my hand is kind of forced here, and I decide to just go in and try to take out Sonlin, or put at least a little bit of damage on. But now, finally, the glass cannon breaks, and I'm able to take out Sonlin using the 2 Tanuki Tricksters. In the process, I'm also able to move on to the initiative glyph, which might mean I'll actually get to win initiative next round. Going into round 4, I figure an order marker 1 on the Tanuki is a safe bet, given that I have Dagmar right now, so I definitely go with that. I also decide to split 2-2 here. I'm going to do a 1 on Tanuki and the X on Tanuki as well too, and try to move in some other forces. I considered going with Molten Crustaceans now because now that Sonlin's gone, I feel like the Crustaceans gain a lot more value, but they're just kind of slow and numerous, and I really don't need to move in with them. If it gets to the point where I lose all my forward forces, my opponent has to move in to me, and I'd rather they come to me with that many crabs just sitting there in the start zone. So I'm just happy leaving them for the late end game if I need to, so I decided to go with Marachot instead. So I've got a 2-2 split with 2 and 3 being on Marachot. My opponent, though, doesn't have a lot of great options here. They have 2 Scions that are still alive, and they have Ziamara, and Ziamara is at 2, or has 2 wounds on their card. So, yeah, it's kind of a long shot no matter what they do. They decide to put 3 order markers on Ziamara and 1 on the Scions. In keeping with the theme of the game, I lose initiative even though I have Dagmar. Hey, it happens. Anyways, Ziamara is my opponent's order marker number 1, and Ziamara moves on to the Talisman of Defense, gaining that +1 defense. That's what Sonlin dropped when they died. They then attack one of my Tanuki Tricksters, but it is blocked. My order marker 1 is on the Tanuki Tricksters, of course, and I try to get a little bit creative with their placement here, just to be as annoying as possible because I know that I don't have another order marker on them. So I hop one of them up onto the max height, and I hop around with this other one here. I use Nagawaza to push Ziamara down onto the low ground so I can get a heighted attack against her, and I use the other one to attack the Scion that it was adjacent to, killing the Scion but doing no damage to Ziamara. In hindsight, though, I think I really chose the wrong Scion to kill. I should have targeted the one closer to my opponent than to me, because I really opened up this spot that Ziamara can now just casually walk up onto to gain height, attacking down on my Tanuki Trickster, and I shouldn't open up opportunities like that. Why would I do that? Moreover, it then moves Ziamara away from my start zone, and I don't want that to happen because Marachot's my number 2, and I know that, right? I want Marachot to be in range of Ziamara, or vice versa, I suppose. But this allows Ziamara to get out of the threat zone there, so whoops, my bad. Unfortunately for me, my opponent sees exactly what I've done here, and they use their order marker 2 to move Ziamara to the spot that I opened up for them, and they take the heighted attack down on my Tanuki Trickster, killing the Tanuki Trickster. My order marker 2 is on Marachot, and I move Marachot up, kind of conservatively here. I place them in a spot where there's no height adjacent to them, and because I don't want Ziamara to be able to fly in and get a heighted attack off, so I play a little bit safer like that. I want to protect this asset if I can. I seem to be missing a photo of this, but my opponent's order marker 3 was on Ziamara, who attacks the Tanuki Trickster she's engaged with, but the Tanuki blocks the attack. Marachot is my order marker number 3, and Marachot moves up and engages Ziamara. I'm going to try to use the heroic rune glyph. I actually get my +1 attack. Maybe it'll matter here. I roll my 2 dice, and actually it does matter. I get 2 skulls, which is 4 skulls in total because Marachot has that 2 auto skull ability there. And then my opponent's able to block 2 of those and takes 2 wounds on Ziamara, putting her at 1 life remaining. I attempt Marachot's Mind Whisper ability, but it does not succeed. Round 5 is just a formality at this point. My opponent only has 2 life remaining in their entire army, and I still have 3 squads of crabs back home, so yeah. I do decide to get a little cheeky with my order marker placement, though. I decide to put order marker 2 on the Tanuki and 1, 3, and the X on Marachot. I figured that, in the unlikely scenario that my opponent survives the attack and then is able to do enough damage to kill Marachot from a heighted attack, in that case, I still want to have a figure in the area available to kill something, so decided the Tanuki was up for the challenge. I win initiative! Finally! It finally happens this game. My order marker 1's on Marachot. I attack up at Ziamara. I get 2 skulls on my dice again, so that's a combined total of 4, and it's enough to kill Ziamara. My opponent loses their turn because that was their order marker 1, and probably their order marker 2 and 3 if I had to guess. But then my order marker 2 activates, which is the Tanuki Trickster, and the Tanuki is able to kill the final Scion. As a result, I take home the win and add another victory to my belt. The army my opponent handed me, while certainly unoptimized, objectively unoptimized, it had enough material here to kind of neuter the threat potential of Sonlin. Sonlin is kind of similar to Scavrith in a way where, targeting a single priority target can do a lot of damage. However, he isn't as hyper-specialized as Scavrith, I would say, in my opinion at least. He still can throw down against squads fairly decently, Sonlin I mean, and, Sonlin has the potential to go up against crabs and, deal with them accordingly. But Necrotechs are pretty good counter to Sonlin because they can get in and outrange him essentially with their high movement speed. And Tanukis are kind of tough for Sonlin to actually take down, and they hit quite hard, and Sonlin doesn't want to take any hits. However, in this game, Sonlin took a ton of hits. I don't know, I feel like Sonlin should have died, at least a turn or two earlier, or an attack or two earlier, especially by the time my Tanukis had height, two heighted attacks in on Sonlin. That should be lights out, I think. Sonlin really overperformed in the defensive department, that's for sure, and I'm sure that treasure glyph really helped. I was really disappointed that I couldn't make better use of the attack glyph, but my opponent's army just doesn't have another option to give the attack glyph to. So, that significantly downplayed the importance of that glyph. Whereas, had I had Sonlin or, a figure with, that I'd be making a lot of attacks with, I think, that attack glyph could have really helped me, but not in this game. Once again, though, I think we see from the results of this game the importance of focusing your round 1 order marker placement. When you just kind of malaise it over your entire army, you open a lot of it up to attacks without being able to retaliate. So because I was focus firing, putting all my order markers on the Necrotechs, I was able to get a lot of value out of that card, and my opponent was just kind of presenting things to me to attack, which obviously isn't what you want to do. I don't think that's entirely my opponent's fault, though. I think part of that is the army I handed to them, and I don't know, maybe I'm taking too much credit for that, but I really do think it kind of presents as a combined arms sort of build. You're supposed to move Ziamara up, you're supposed to move Mielki up, and then you're supposed to fly in with Sonlin to heal them. That's kind of what it looks like on paper. I just don't think that's the way you should play it. So I think I might have, in some respects, tricked my opponents into kind of playing that in an unoptimized way. I think even one more squad of Scions would tip the balance into, no, okay, I should just play Sonlin. But only having one squad of Scions just doesn't give you a lot of safety net there. So I think then all of a sudden folks are looking at, okay, how do I make as much value out of these other pieces of the army? I don't know, it's interesting to think about. Regardless, on to round 3. So here we are in game 3, and we're on the map Cultivation by Flash 19. However, this is an abomination of cultivation, as I unfortunately discovered when reviewing the footage. Not only are the power glyphs placed in the wrong spot, but these ruins are placed in the wrong spot as well, too. They're supposed to be just a little bit further forward. Whoopsie daisy, frick, who's the tournament director who supervised this? In my defense, however, this is the one map of the 4 at this event that I didn't physically build myself, so just saying. Anywho, sometimes you run into situations where there's too many cooks in the kitchen and, wires get crossed, things get placed in the wrong spot. It is what it is. So anyways, this is the situation that we are faced with here. Both me and my opponent move into this match unbeknownst to the fact that the map is constructed wrong, but we play it as it lies, Mr. Gilmore. My opponent is also 2-0 at the tournament here, and they are bringing an army that kind of mirrors mine in some ways. Their army contains 2 squads of scions, Queen Kirion, Mielki the Kiri warrior, and Tuck Harrigan. Kind of a rogues gallery of pieces here, but I kind of get some of the continuity, some of it, Mielki is just a good piece, I think, in Reverse the Whip in the contemporary format, so makes sense to have Mielki in there. Tuck Harrigan also is a good equalizer, I suppose is what I want to say here, where if you get burned with bad order marker placement or your order markers get killed, you can move them onto Tuck instead so you don't have dead order markers. I think that's kind of important. Queen Kirion is really bad, and 2 squads of scions. I think that just, that's 150 points that you're throwing behind a figure that isn't all that good. So when I look at this army and I got to go up against this army here, I think I just kill Queen Kirion, chop the head off the snake, and then you got, 150 points of dead weight of scions just kicking around without anything to do. So, I think that's my main target here, is just kill Queen Q and then, mop up the rest. Since this is a round where we play our own armies, we're back to giving gifts to our opponents in the form of treasure glyphs. And because of what I previously mentioned about my opponent's army, I was really tempted to give them the +1 attack glyph in this matchup here. I think my army is just, pretty significantly favored to win this. Queen Kirion and the Scions are just too slow to ever catch Sonlin. So, I think Sonlin can just pot shot away at Queen Q the whole time as she's trying desperately to get into my start zone. So, What caused me to not do this, however, is Tuck Harrigan can get the +1 attack, and I don't want that to happen because Tuck is actually kind of threatening against Sonlin, because Tuck also flies and can shoot and can drop in at a moment's notice. Additionally, Mielki with +1 attack is also kind of scary, so I opted to give my opponent the +1 defense glyph instead, and they did the same for me. So I put the +1 defense on Sonlin. My opponent opted to put the +1 defense on Mielki. And I kind of disagree with this decision, if I'm being honest. I kind of get the rationale, but Queen Kirion is your main piece here. You have almost, how much is it? It's almost 300 points if your 425 point army built around that one figure. You got to defend that figure at all costs. I think the glyph has to go on Queen Kirion here. Anyways, both my opponent and I have the same strategy here. It's basically a full send on the Scions and then just hope that your king piece is weaker than my king piece. As such, we both have our 3 numbered order markers on the Scions and the X on some miscellaneous Kiri figure somewhere. Before I forget though, the glyphs on this map are the glyph of Dagmar, the initiative glyph up there in the north, and the southern glyph is a really interesting one. This is the glyph removal glyph. Fedinin or something like that, I can't remember. Pharaoh, yeah. This one removes another glyph off the map. It's a temporary glyph, so stepping on this will remove both glyphs. And I think it's actually a pretty interesting pair of glyphs to have. Sometimes the glyph removal doesn't really have that much impact if it's another temporary glyph on the other side of the map or whatever. You might as well just go for the other temporary glyph. But when it's a permanent glyph, and especially one like Dagmar, where both players kind of want it, but they don't want their opponent to have it either. So you kind of want to play for both sides of the map. You want to be able to negate it for your opponent, but also perhaps grab it for yourself if you're able to do it. So the first round begins, my opponent wins initiative, and they move Queen Kyrian and 3 Scions up into this max height area. Or I guess it's not technically max height, because there's actually these 2 single hex heights that are on either corner near the glyphs here that are technically the max height. Kind of a strange map design there. But yeah, anyways, this central spot where the whole army has, conglomerated to, doesn't actually exist in the legit build of this map, and both me and my opponent were remarking about this map. We're like, wow, this map really benefits flying, because these ruins really block off a lot of passageway through. Oh, how little we knew. So anyways, on my order marker 1, I move Sonlin up, and I move the Scions in as well too. I take a shot across the bow here with Sonlin, targeting Queen Kyrian, and I roll 4 out of 4 skulls on this shot, and I deal 3 wounds. So yeah, my opponent's king army is almost kaput right out of the first salvo here. However, I don't think we traced line of sight for this when we made this attack. From this angle, it really looks like Sonlin shouldn't be able to make this shot. Maybe we did. I don't remember doing it, though, because we would have had to move those ruins out of the way to try to get that. So I think we both just assumed Sonlin could see this. Yeah, so this this game is going to heck in a handbasket pretty quick. My Scion placement is pretty important, though. I have 2 Scions in the front there, blocking those spots. I don't want Queen Kyrian to be able to get to those to attack Sonlin. And I've got 1 Scion hiding in the back behind the ruins here, just to keep my order marker safe. I also don't want my opponent's Scions flying in and shooting at my Scions, killing all my Scions and all my order markers. That'd be calamity. That's how I lose this game. So I'm hoping this will be enough protection here. It really might not be. It depends where Queen Kyrian can get here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, okay, no, I'm good. My opponent's order marker 2 is on the Scions, so they move Queen Kyrian up behind the jungle tree here. She attacks up on one of my Scions and kills it. This then opens up a spot for my opponent to fly a Scion in and replace it, tying Sonlin down and allowing all 3 of my opponent's Scions now to attack into Sonlin. However, they're not able to do any wounds. By taking that particular spot with one of their Scions, my opponent has effectively protected Queen Kyrian from a heighted attack from Sonlin. However, I don't care. Queen Kyrian dies now. So on my second order marker, I fly Sonlin, taking the leaving engagement, although it misses, right down here onto the low ground, and I do my double attack into my first attack, Dragon Assault, into Queen Kyrian, killing her, and then my second attack up into the Scion that was beside me there, killing the Scion as well. I still have 2 Scions of my own, so I moved the one that was behind the ruins down into the south here beside this tree, and I'm able to kill my opponent's Scion that was previously there as well. So that kind of frees up Sonlin to kind of explore that avenue a little bit more. However, with my Scion that was beside Sonlin earlier, I move it down here behind this jungle bush to threaten the glyph removal because I see my opponent going up for initiative here. However, it's just a huge mistake on my part. I really can't believe I didn't see this. My opponent can actually fly that Scion that's up in the north there next to Sonlin on their next order marker and get a heighted attack down. And there's no reason why they should be able to do this because my Scion was guarding that spot earlier. If I just don't move my Scion, then I'm at no risk. So yeah, big blunder on my part, honestly. That's a huge misplay. Luckily, it's only a Scion there to take advantage of it. Had that been anything more threatening, and I could have just lost Sonlin, which is, ridiculous to open myself up to such an attack. So on my opponent's next order marker, they do exactly that. They fly their Scion in and get a heighted attack down on Sonlin. Luckily, it only costs me a single wound, but that very well could have done more damage. They also develop up 2 more from the start zone, kind of into that midsection there, which has the high ground advantage. They divide them up in a way to stop Sonlin from being able to occupy any spot there, so they've kind of cut that cross in the middle, which is a smart placement, I think, on my opponent's part. It doesn't really matter all that much, though. Sonlin is straight gas at taking out Scions. So, yeah, Sonlin moves up onto the adjacency there to attack my opponent's Scion that got the cheap shot in, killing that Scion, and then using Dragon Assault to then shoot at a distance, killing another Scion that was positioned in that cross section. I then move my Scions in. My black one here kills the other Scion that was there, and my white one with the down here in the south next to the tree just kind of moves in a little bit. It's not going to step on the glyph removal thing, but it's still threatening there. I don't really need to worry about that being an issue now. My opponent's got basically nothing left, so. So that's the end of the round, and I'm significantly in the lead now. I've taken out my opponent's king build, or queen build, I suppose, in this instance, and cleaned up all but one of their Scions as well. That's like I said earlier, over 300 points, or almost 300 points of their army, just poof, gone, and all it cost me was 1 Scion and a wound on Sonlin. Going into round 2, I split my order markers up the same way as before. However, I've moved one of them onto Sonlin. So I've got a 3-1 split between the Scions and 1 on Sonlin. Now, I know that the one on Sonlin is my order marker 3, and my 1-2X is on the Scions, but I'm really hoping my opponent thinks that all 3 real ones are on the Scions, and they don't think that I've moved a real order marker onto Sonlin, because I want them to not shoot at Sonlin, right? I realize the threat of Tuck Harrigan is still out there, still present, and Tuck can really do a number on Sonlin if left to his own devices there. So I'm trying to force Tuck to target Scions instead of targeting Sonlin. Now, I realize that could backfire. If I lose initiative and Tuck gets really hot with their rolls, they might actually kill one of my order markers. However, it will protect Sonlin longer and allow Sonlin to deal with Tuck, which is what I kind of need to do. Tuck can run circles around the other pieces that I have back there in the start zone, so Sonlin needs to live to take out Tuck. That's gotta happen. I can't remember exactly where my opponent's order markers were all placed. I think there was 3 on Mielke, 1 on the Scions, but they win initiative and decide to roll for Tuck Harrigan's Glide-In ability, and they get it. So then they just decide to move the order markers right on over to Tuck. Because I knew Tuck was going to be a threat this round, I had placed one of my Scions in one of the better Tuck spots, I thought, which that being this max height hex down here below the tree. There still is the one in the north there, but if Tuck lands there, I just move in with Sonlin and kill Tuck next order marker. So I think by me placing all my order markers on the Scions, I've kind of goaded my opponent into attacking the Scions instead of Sonlin. Which is good for me, I think. It's what I want in this moment. So what they decide to do is to land in the very back. Their Tuck is just tucked right back here. It's not a height spot. It's not a very good spot to gain advantage on these Scions. So they take a shot up into the one standing on that perfect Tuck spot, and they're not able to kill it. It swings around to my order marker, and yeah, we come in killing. Sonlin flies in and shoots at Tuck down there, and the Scions kind of go and divvy up, damage here and there. Across 2 different attacks between the Scion and Sonlin, I deal 3 wounds to Tuck, which is huge. Already Tuck's on the ropes, and he's got all my opponent's order markers. So, yeah, that's not very good. And the Scion of mine that flies into my opponent's start zone kills their last Scion as well. My opponent reveals order marker 2 on Tuck, and they make a move that really stumped me for a good solid minute. They walk Tuck off of this even footing with the Scion, and they walk them onto low ground over here next to the tree, and attack up into the Scion but are unable to kill it. I'm kind of scratching my head about this at first. I'm like, what is going on here? Why would you give up the even ground attack? Even if you killed that Scion, it opens up a heighted attack for Sonlin to then come in and get height on that little peanut, there. Like, that's... that just seems like such a bad move. I don't get it. As is, I can get height on Tuck from just flying right here, right? But then I look over at my opponent's cards, and I realize they have an order marker still on Mielke, and that's gotta be a real order marker. Because if I move here, all of a sudden Mielke goes here and gets 2 attacks in against Sonlin unopposed. And that's just, I can't let that happen at any point in this game. Sonlin's got the defense glyph, which is great and all, but 2 attacks of 4, I don't want to do that. So I'm really glad I caught the trap before it could be sprung. So I kind of, hemmed and hawed on okay, what should I do here? I could, go to those ice hexes down there and attack Tuck that way, or I could go onto the sand hexes in the start zone and attack Mielke. I decided to go for Tuck first. And the reason why is because Tuck is still my win condition. My opponent having Tuck and I losing Sonlin is really bad for Mielke and Ziamara back in the start zone there. I need to take the opportunity now to kill Tuck so that I'm not face to face with having to chase him around the map and him just pot-shotting me endlessly, right? So this is my opportunity. I need to do it now. So I commit to that idea. It's also one of those things that you have to remember about playing Heroscape. Generally, if you're winning, play conservatively. If you're losing, play aggressively, right? Go for bigger plays if you feel like you're losing, and go for safer plays if you feel like you're winning. And in this situation, I think I'm winning. So the safe call here is just, don't go for Mielke right now. She'll be there later. You can go get her later, right? Go for Tuck in the moment. So anyways, I reveal my order marker and I fly in and kill Tuck, and that's that. My Scions then kind of, fly in towards Mielke here. I'm hiding one behind the ruins, and then the other one I actually shift over. And I think my thought process was I wanted to open up more space here just in case Sonlin needs more space, but it was just silly. I shouldn't have done that. The Scion should be standing where it was to try to tie Mielke down to that spot, because Sonlin is currently 6 spaces away with flying to Mielke. It won't guarantee that Mielke stays there, but, it would at least be something, right? I guess I was trying to, almost like a guard dog. I was trying to keep her from running away, but by moving my Scion, I actually enabled her to run away. So my opponent can then circle around and gain the tree bonus, which is that was silly. So my opponent does that. They reveal order marker 3 on Mielke. They circle around, they gain the tree bonus, and they kill my Scion. On my turn, I reveal order marker 3 on Sonlin, and it's kind of too bad I didn't have the 3 on the Scions here, because I feel like my last Scion's actually in a good spot to gain a heighted attack down on Mielke, but alas, I was playing defensively, and that's probably the right call, honestly. I am, however, able to find a spot, and it's pretty tough to do this when you're 2 flighted figures against each other. I'm able to find a spot where Sonlin can get the first strike against Mielke, but Mielke cannot engage Sonlin. Sonlin has 6 move with flying, and Mielke has 5 move with flying. This means that, no matter where Sonlin is perched, Mielke can close that distance. However, in this exact spot, there's a bush in the way. There's a tree here, right? So Mielke can't do anything about that. I've got a perfect alpha strike spot, and Mielke will just have to run away or deal with my Scion, or I don't know what Mielke's gonna do, but it is moving into the next round. Or wait, no it's not, I forgot about this, but because Sonlin is 6 spaces away from Mielke, Sonlin can shoot at Mielke from here. And so Sonlin takes a shot, rolls 4 out of 4 skulls, and Mielke completely whiffs on defense. Ouch! Okay, well that just put this game to bed. Well, going into round 3, my opponent's order markers are easy. They've got 1 life Mielke, and my order markers are easy too. I just put them all on Sonlin. So, yeah. We roll initiative, I win initiative, Sonlin flies in, gets the Alpha Strike off, and Mielke dies. So I get to take the 3-0 victory here, which is, it feels good. Feels good. So obviously a lot of things went wrong in this game. The map was constructed wrong, the glyphs were placed in the wrong spot. My opponent had horrible defensive rolls and key moments there, which really cost them a lot of their powerful figures. However, I also think my opponent misplayed the treasure glyph thing as well too. I really think that defensive glyph needed to be on Kyrian, and it might have been a bit of a different matchup had that happened. But like I said at the start as well too, I think my army is just a lot better than the one that my opponent brought here, and that's always the risk you run when you play Reverse the Whip. You're trying to aim for what middle of the pack is. And sometimes you get it right and sometimes you get it wrong, where maybe what you brought isn't quite strong enough to deal with what the true median is. That being said, that's what the format's all about. It's about threading the needle. And I feel like my army is, I don't feel like it's overpowered for the format or anything like that. It lost in the previous game. And in fact, the army it lost to actually went undefeated in the format. So that turned out, that the Crabs and the Tanukis and Necrotech and Marachat with no familiar turned out to be the strongest army of the whole day, which is, to me, that's mind-blowing. I didn't see it at all. I thought that one would be pretty weak, all things considered, but it does have a lot of material. Like, there just is a lot of figures on the board, so I guess it can make magic happen. Anyways, this victory is another notch in my belt, and I move on to round 4. So, going into round 4, my opponent and I are playing on Hidden by Cleon. This is another pretty visually interesting map, I think, with the snow and the rock kind of combined together in the middle. I like maps like this. This is another reverse matchup where my opponent is using my army and I'm using my opponent's army. And oh boy, what an army it is. Decker the Burrow Breaker, Shauna the Zenith Wing, Garushia, Grovekeeper, Vrono the Brambletooth, and Imperator Kane, along with the Vorid Glide Strikers, all mixed together into some crazy combination. Yeah, that's what I'm dealing with here. Yeah, this is quite the army. Where do we even start with this? Well, I guess I'll start by saying I'm really glad that the Glide Strikers finally popped up, and I'm honestly really glad that I got to use them against my army, against the one that I brought to the event, because the Glide Strikers actually have the potential to do a lot of damage to that army specifically. They can snipe Scions with height advantage if I get to drop early, and they can do damage to Sonlin as well too. That's 3-on-3 dice, right? That's a pretty good matchup to go into. Like, for every wound that a Glide Striker can do to Sonlin, that's immense value. Like, they're hitting so much above their point value at that point. So I'm actually really happy to see Glide Strikers in that my opponent has handed to me here. I've got some other decent toys here to play with. Kane is kind of nice to be able to move around and stomp and get those ranged shots in. Garushia isn't great into anything here. Decker really bad into most of the things here. So yeah, like there are some interesting pieces in here that I can try to use, but I really need to do a lot with the Glide Strikers. And you're gonna have a bad day if you're relying on the Glide Strikers to do a lot for you. I get to retain the Talisman of Defense from my previous match, and I really hemmed and hawed on which figure to put it on. I opted to ultimately put it on Kane at the end of the day, because Kane is a ranged figure that can go toe-to-toe with Sonlin if push comes to shove. So I kind of want Kane to survive till the end game. That's where I think Kane gets a lot of value, is in the end game, where Stomp becomes more of a threat, and just running around and running away and using their ranged attack becomes a little bit better. My opponent gets the +1 attack glyph from their previous match, unfortunately for me, because my army that I handed them is a really great army to have the +1 attack glyph with. So yeah, lots of great choices to put the glyph on. I think both Sonlin and Mielke are both really strong viable options. They opted to go for Mielke rather than Sonlin. I'm kind of glad they did, because Sonlin getting that +1 attack on the ranged attacks as well is kind of scary. But Mielke's more likely going to get the double attack in, so yeah, I don't know. It's kind of one way or the other. I think you're getting a ton of value out of the attack glyph in that army. The power glyphs on the map here turned out to be kind of a good news for me and a bad news for me combination. We'll start with the bad news. Down here in the south is Kelda. That's that temporary glyph that heals any hero that steps onto it. Yeah, this could completely negate any wounds that I do to Sonlin early on with Glide Strikers. If Sonlin can just fly over there and heal up later on in the match, yeah, that's really bad. I don't want Sonlin to get there at all costs, so I need to do something to prevent that. However, in the north is a pretty good glyph for me. That's Wannock. Now, my army has plenty of Wannock soaks. I got so many heroes just kicking around here. I've got Chana who can heal beasts, so I could put the wounds on Vrono and heal them off later. I could put the wounds on Chana. You know, it doesn't really matter. My opponent doesn't really have good Wannock soaks, though. So if I can get a Glide Striker to land and then walk over onto the wound glyph later and just kind of chip away at my opponent that way while tying them down with other figures, that's big for me. So I really want to control Wannock this game, but I don't need to send a whole army that direction. I can just do it with Glide Strikers if I do it right. So, you know, pre-game strategy, I'm fully committed to the Glide Strikers here. I think that's honestly the right call. And the best play to try to cripple my opponent's army as best as I can right out of the gate. So I put 3 order markers on the Glide Strikers and 1 order marker on Kane, with the X being the one on Kane. My opponent puts 2 order markers on the Scions, 1 on Ziamara and 1 on Mielke. And I think my army build is working. Again, I think it's tricking my opponent into trying to play it as some sort of combined arms contraption, like what they've handed me, essentially. Where I think the real strategy is you just pick a piece and you just try to commit to that piece rather than combining all the figures together. But we'll see. I mean, like, the Glide Strikers are kind of terrible, so if they aren't able to do enough damage, my opponent might just safely be able to move a big core meaty army into the middle of the map unopposed. That would be really bad for me. So we'll see what happens. Well, I'll tell you what happens. I lose initiative, and my opponent reveals order marker 1 on the Scions and moves Sonlin and the Scions up into the middle of the map, kind of threatening the whole mid-range. I reveal order marker 1 on the Vorad Glide Strikers, and I drop a single Glide Striker down, take a shot into a Scion, and miss. My opponent reveals order marker 2 on Mielke and moves her up into the middle of the map, but not close enough to a Glide Striker to be able to attack. Because of the way my opponent organized their order markers, I now know that Mielke is stranded there and isn't a threat. I reveal order marker 2 on the Vorad Glide Strikers, I drop another Glide Striker in, and across 2 attacks, I'm able to kill 1 Scion. These are not the early game triumphs I've been looking for. You know, 3 heighted attacks to kill 1 Scion is pathetic. My opponent then reveals order marker 3 on Ziamara, and oh boy, that is really bad news for my opponent. They move Ziamara into the middle there as well, and they've got their force there, all centered. But I can't help but feel they did this in completely the wrong order. I feel like if you're gonna go for that, Sonlin's the last piece you add into the middle, because you don't want to put your high value figure in the middle, you know, completely exposed to ranged fire this whole time. Why not move Ziamara first, put your order marker 1 on Ziamara, and then on Mielke, and then on Sonlin to get them into the middle. I just feel like their order was completely backwards in this case. I then reveal order marker 3 on the Vord Glide Strikers. I drop another Glide Striker in and prepare to attack. I do, however, scooch this one in the north back 1 space, and I really am kind of regretful that I didn't have them there initially, because I could have dropped them there just as easily, because now they're within 4 move spaces of the Wanek glyph, whereas before, where I dropped them, there were 5 and they couldn't get there, because it would have been nice to just hop on the glyph right now, it's the end of the round, why not do it now? Right? But misplay on my part. Anywho, all 3 of the Vord Glide Strikers have height on the Scions, and they all have shots, and they all take shots, and they all miss their shots. So it kind of feels like a wash for the first round here, right? Like, my opponent misplayed their order markers pretty heavily, I think, but I just was not able to take advantage of this. Yeah, I've got some Glide Strikers on the map now, but they just can't connect. I was only able to kill a single Scion. Like, that's so bad. That's so bad. Anyways, going into round 2, I'm going to try to make something happen here. Obviously, I want to drop another Glide Striker off the card, and the ones I have alive are all in good spots. If I lose initiative, that's pretty bad, though, because my opponent can fly in with Sonlin and get a double attack and potentially kill 2 Glide Strikers and let the Scions kill the 3rd, and all of a sudden it feels like I've wasted my entire first round, so winning initiative would be great for me in this moment. Anyways, I decide to divvy up my order markers with 3 of them on the Glide Strikers, 1 of them on Kane again, and Kane this time has the 3, and the Glide Strikers have 1, 2x. It kind of caught me by surprise, but their order markers are actually in the same distribution as the first round, 2 on the Scions, 1 on Mielke, and 1 on Ziamara. I suppose it kind of makes sense, though, because if all your figures are in the center now, they can actually use the combined arms combat style, so maybe now it makes sense to distribute the order markers like this? I don't know. I just find that spreading order markers out across 3 different cards gives your opponent too much information. It really just telegraphs, like, if their order marker 1 is on Mielke, for example, then I know that Mielke is not going to be a threat for the rest of the round because she only has 1 order marker on her. Whereas if you just choose between 2 cards, you can always kind of keep that bluff going. So anyways, I win initiative, and I pull off the one thing that no other Heroscape player has ever done before. I land all 4 Glide Strikers. They're all alive, they're all on the map, and they all take their shots. As a reward for being the first ever Heroscape player to ever pull off this feat, they go ham, and they actually do connect this time. They're finally able to kill the last 2 Scions, and they even put a wound in on Sonlin for good measure. This puts my opponent in a real pickle. All of a sudden, I've killed at least 1 order marker, and perhaps even 2. Well, let's find out. My opponent's order marker 1 was on the Scions, which is now dead, and my order marker 2 is on the Vord Glide Strikers. My objectives have been updated somewhat. I need to kill Sonlin without him getting to Kelda. That's the new objective. So in order to do this, I move a Glide Striker up adjacent to Sonlin to try to tie him down, and I then pivot one of my other Glide Strikers to kind of get in between him and Kelda, just to kind of create, a little bit of interplay there, so that if he tries to run away, I can then move in and tag him with another one. I now also take this opportunity to move my Glide Striker in the north all the way onto Wanek. I know this is my last order marker on the Glide Strikers. My opponent doesn't know that because I still have the X on the Glide Strikers, but I take this opportunity to move there. My opponent really doesn't have anything with order markers on it to threaten Wanek now, so I feel pretty safe with this, because I know that if my opponent gets a chance to use Sonlin again this game, they're going to fly towards Kelda, rather than try to take a shot at the Glide Striker. So the only other figure within range there is Ziamara. So Ziamara would have to go fly up there to take 2 turns to get there to knock out one figure on a glyph. It's a super safe place for a Glide Striker to be now. So yeah, I feel pretty good about that play. The Glide Strikers are starting to pick their shots a little bit better because now across 3 different attacks into Sonlin, we do 3 more wounds, giving him only 2 life remaining. Regrettably, my opponent's Order Marker 2 was also on the Scions. Big blunder on their part, I think. I think you can get away with Order Marker 1, potentially, but when you're placing your Order Markers, you got to think about what happens if you win initiative and what happens if you lose initiative. And at the start of round 2, I had 3 Glide Strikers, all within range of the Scions. Like, it really should, like, there shouldn't have been 2 Scions by the time that I had 3 Glide Strikers, because I was just taking repetitive shots into them. There should have been a lot more dead Scions. In a roundabout way, it's a good thing that there were still 2, because it kind of, I guess, tricked my opponent into putting more Order Markers on the card than they should have. I think the correct number might have been 0, to be honest. Maybe the X, maybe 1 and X, something like that. But no, not 1 and 2. Because this is what happens, I suppose. It just makes such a big target for me to attack the Scions. They were already a pretty big target, but now it's like a target with like a lot of benefit. If I take it out, killing order markers is huge, So here we are. Anyways, because I had prepared for, worst case scenario, I lose all my Glide Strikers. Order Marker 3 was on Kane. Kane steps forward and takes out Sonlin, so the combined forces of the Vorid are able to overpower the Archmage Wizard. My opponent then reveals Order Marker 3 on Mielke and flies her nearby Ziamara and kills a Vorid Glide Striker. It's the end of the round, I roll for Wannock, and my opponent puts a wound on Ziamara. Going into round 3, I decide that, Glide Strikers have more than earned their keep at this point. I probably don't want to put too many more Order Markers on them. I feel like 1 more might be reasonable here. I do have heighted shots down on Ziamara for my current position, so I decided to put the 1 and the X on the Glide Strikers, and the 2 and 3 on Imperator Kane. My opponent decides to do a 2-2 split between Ziamara and Mielke, and I think this is probably the proper way to play that. You potentially could get away with 3 Order Markers on Mielke here, but you do want to eventually reposition Ziamara closer to my start zone so that Mielke can gain that benefit while she's in there chopping things up. Anyways, this round, my opponent wins initiative, reveals Order Marker 1 on Mielke, and takes this really juicy spot in between the Glide Striker and Imperator Kane. She goes ham with these attacks because she has the +1 glyph. She kills the Glide Striker with the first attack and does 3 wounds to Kane in the second attack. I completely whiffed the defensive roll despite having the defensive glyph on Kane's card, which really hurts. I have 2 real Order Markers on Kane, and they're both Order Markers that are coming later on. Like, that's a 2 and a 3. Kane might be toast, and I might be losing 2 Order Markers here. It's huge. I could really swing things around. My Order Marker number 1 is on the Glide Striker, who steps forward and takes a shot. I can't remember which Kiri he shoots at, but he misses. Luckily for me, my opponent's Order Marker 2 is on Ziamara and not Mielke. So my opponent moves Ziamara up onto that heighted spot next to the ruin. Really great spot for Ziamara. She can then extend her aura into the start zone and really protect Mielke. But it does mean I actually get to use Kane before he dies. I reveal Order Marker 2 on Kane, I step him forward, try to do my stomp roll. I actually fail the stomp, which is pretty tough to do. And then I do a regular attack into Mielke, and I deal 1 wound. My opponent then reveals Order Marker 3 on Mielke. She uses her double attack against Kane and kills him. That also kills my Order Marker 3, and drops the defense glyph on the map. Overall, a pretty bad round for me, pretty decent for my opponent, but in my defense, I didn't have much of an opportunity to make much of this round. There were just, a couple of Glide Strikers left alive, and Kane kind of in a weird spot. I was hoping Kane would last longer and I could get more value from the stomp rolls, but alas. When my opponent killed Kane, they were able to heal Ziamara using Mielke's ability, but then it's the end of the round, so I rolled for the Wannick wound, and they put the wound right back on Ziamara, so kind of a net neutral there. Going into this next round, I really have to shift gears. It's basically going to be Garusha and the little beasts that could, and hopefully they're enough to stop the Mielke-Ziamara combo. Just because I had a really commanding round 2, it doesn't mean this game's over. Mielke and Ziamara are a great 1-2 punch of survivability and healing. It's a really tough thing to take down. So my opponent's in a pretty good spot here. Ziamara's got the whole start zone covered, and Mielke can just kind of go to town. She's got the +1 attack glyph, and she can heal Ziamara up as she kills things. Yeah, it could go either way still. I do have the wound glyph under wraps, and that's going to be huge, I think, for the longevity of the game. It's going to take a while for my opponent to deal with what's in the start zone and then go deal with the glyph afterwards. So, I've got that in my back pocket. However, in contrast, my opponent still has the glyph of Kelda, and their heroes fly, so they can just kind of fly away and go heal up if they ever need to. For my order markers here, I decide to do 3 order markers on Garusha and 1 order marker on the Glide Strikers, just because I still have one that could be, a plausible bluff. It is the bluff, of course, though. That's the X, and the 3 numbered ones are on Garusha. My opponent decides to do a 2-2 split again between Mielke and Ziamara. This round, my opponent wins initiative, and they reveal order marker 1 on Mielke. Now, I'm going to have to rely on people in the comment section here to tell me if we played this right. I don't know. So this is the path that Mielke took. She walked onto the glyph of the Talisman of Defense, picked it up, and continued walking down into the start zone, and then was stopped by the Sharp Thorns or Wicked Thorns or whatever thorns that Vrono has. And actually, Vrono rolled an 18 on that, too, which dealt a wound back to Mielke, which is kind of huge. And then Mielke kills Vrono in 1 hit. And is actually able to heal Ziamara based off of that. So anyways, huge chain of events, but the way we ruled it with this treasure glyph is that Mielke had to walk to pick it up rather than fly to pick it up. Does that make sense? Did we do that right? I don't know. And also, does flying, can you turn flying on later on in your move? Because my opponent actually wanted to get to this space, but we ruled that because they had to walk to pick up the glyph, they had to walk the whole way. So they walked into the Sharp Thorns when you could have flown over it, I think. Is that how that works? Yeah. Either way, that's the way we ruled it. Let us know if we did it wrong. Alright, so it's my turn now. I reveal order marker 1 on Garusha. I'm already down 1 beast, which is not good. So I decide to get creative with my second beast. Check this play out. So I moved Chana to this spot specifically, even though I could get a heighted attack down if I left Chana up on the rock hexes here. I moved Chana out here because I'm trying to tether Mielke away from Garusha. Garusha has reach, so Garusha can attack at a range. They don't need to be adjacent. And so by positioning here, now Mielke has to risk a leaving engagement attack to get to Garusha. I thought this was pretty smart on my part here. Garusha packs quite a wallop from up high. That's 5 dice at a range of 2. It's pretty good. And it's actually able to do 2 more wounds to Mielke. So Mielke's really on the ropes now. And moreover, Mielke can't risk the disengagement safely to go deal with Garusha. So, I don't know. Things turn out my way, though, because my opponent's order marker 2 is on Ziamara, not Mielke. Ziamara moves in and tries to do the same trick to me, tethering Garusha back. However, I'm not fazed by it. Garusha's got 6 life. I'm just going to walk away. So my order marker 2 is on Grucia. I try to use Chana to get the kill here, so I don't even have to use Grucia, but Chana isn't able to. So I take a leaving engagement with Grucia. It doesn't go through, so I move safely, and I'm able to kill Mielke. Now, something interesting happens here, and I think this is the correct ruling. I learned this at Halcon, at least. Because Mielke was carrying 2 treasure glyphs, only one of them is placed, and the other one is destroyed, and my opponent chooses which one they actually drop, because you can't have 2 treasure glyphs on one space, apparently. They can't exist on the same hex. So one of them's destroyed, and the other one survives. So they obviously destroy the +1 attack glyph, and they leave the defense glyph behind. My opponent's order marker 3 was on Mielke, so that's now dead. So I reveal order marker 3 on Grucia, and Chana and Grucia go in and attack Ziamara, dealing 3 wounds. It's the end of the round. I roll for Wanek, and another wound is applied to Ziamara, leaving my opponent with only a 1 life Ziamara. Against the world here, so it kind of goes to show how powerful Wanek is, especially in the late game, because now all of a sudden your opponent cannot choose where to place their wounds. They have to put them on the figures that are fighting. This also puts my opponent in a virtually unwinnable scenario, where their only chance of winning now involves taking multiple leaving disengagement attacks with Ziamara to try desperately to fly over to the Glide Striker that's on the glyph to kill it, and yeah, it's just not happening. I can't remember who wins initiative here, but we go back and forth just kind of trading dice for a little bit until my order marker 2, where I'm able to finally kill Ziamara and claim the win and the 4-0 tournament record. Because the only prize for the event was a prize that I put up, I take home the tree set that I bought. Wow, lucky. Anyways, it'll be a prize in a future event, I think. So what do I think of the whole thing? I think it went really well. It seemed like the players had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. I feel like my army did really well. It was the perfect middle ground of being not too strong, not too weak. It won just as many games as it lost, and I feel like I designed it successfully in a way that kind of confused my opponents. Where they didn't know how to take it out, and they also didn't know how to run it properly. So yeah, I think it was a big win for old Slugscape here. Hopefully I gave some folks out there watching some ideas on running formats in their own local areas. If you do want to do something like Reverse the Whip, I think you really, really need to explicitly tell players that you're trying to make a middle-of-the-road army, and weaker is better than stronger in a format like this, I think. I told players, like, do not bring Adelburn, do not bring Queen Maladrix, right? Like, these are just figures, dude, don't bring these, you know? Like, Maladrix and the Festering Honor Guard could probably just roll over most of the armies that were brought to this event, just solo, right? So, yeah, you need to be pretty clear with your player base on what to do with this. I think in, like, some past events that I've seen footage of, I think there was some footage like of this from like Gen Con. I think they did a Reverse the Whip either last year or this year, can't remember. But yeah, some people just went up against like tier A armies, you know, like because I guess some folks didn't understand what you're supposed to do with that format. You're not supposed to bring the best of the best. Yeah, so you need to really instill that knowledge with your player base if you decide to run this in your own local scene. With that being said, I think like Contemporary only is a really good setting for Reverse the Whip. There are just a lot of like middle of the road and kind of like finicky like minor synergies that are in you know, the Contemporary setting here. A lot of the Age of Annihilation, like Avalon Hill designs kind of have that sort of vibe. The Dryans are really good for this. You just throw a couple of them in to get a little bit of synergy in an army, but not too much, right? The Pirates would have been good as well, right? They're kind of tricky to use effectively. I was definitely examining ideas like that of trying to do like, I don't know, I guess Breach plus the Knaves plus like Bach Burna, you know, like some weird combos like that where like, yeah, there's some synergy there. It's kind of okay, I guess, right? Yeah, Reverse the Whip allows you to play with those figures that you know are kind of like overcosted, like the Scions, for example, like Sonlin, for example, like Ziamara, for example, right? Yeah, you can throw those figures into your army a little bit more safely in Reverse the Whip, which is one of the reasons why I like the format so much. I also just think it's really fun to design armies to do multiple things. And the idea that you need to build an army that you have to be able to beat is a fun challenge, I think. I spend a lot of time in the army building phase of playing Heroscape, and it really is a skill that's like worth developing, is like knowing how to build and draft armies for events, thinking about what you're going to go up against and all that sort of stuff. A lot of the winning and losing is done off of the table. Like it's done before you even set foot in the venue. So that's definitely one spot where I feel like folks should spend some time, developing those skills. And that's certainly not to say that I'm the most skilled at that. I spend a lot of time at it. I don't say I'm any good at it, but I do feel like I did a pretty good job at this event. It's kind of tough to go 4-0 in a Reverse the Whip setting, but I was able to pull it off here. Anyways, that's all for me. Thanks very much for watching here. Happy holidays, and until next time, happy scaping.